the photos of Travis Head celebrating World Cup victory have worked their way through Instagram over the past 36 hours, and then having celebrated with him firsthand, that's the assessment of Mitch Marsh. If he makes this game tomorrow, it'll be a miracle. Pete Lalor is with me. What a lovely tone to start off on. Pete, hello.
We can see why he's the most loved player, best on ground, best off it, Gerard. I recall the team celebrating after winning that test series in Pakistan under my hotel window. And they kicked on long and late into the night. And when I pulled my curtains back in the morning, they'd been celebrating on the pool deck. There was nothing there but the trophy. And I checked my phone and the team were already at the airport. And I tweeted, I said, "Hey, fellas, I think you've left something behind." And Pat Cummins responded, "We think Heady's still back there somewhere. Don't worry."
He looks more and more like Warwick Todd all the time, and I sort of feel like he's taking on a bit of that persona as well.
He looks like it. Yeah, we've all got a neighbour who kind of mows the lawn. He's got the lawnmower in one hand, the beer in the other, and the sort of King G shorts. He's got that tradie, dishevelled look down pat, hasn't he? Absolutely. And it's been the coronation of Travis Head, hasn't it?
My word,
I think we've all just had to admit it. Your fellow SEN commentator, Gerard, Tim Payne, said to me at the start of, I'd have to go back and check, was it 3 summers ago, I reckon? He just said, "Travis Head, I've just seen him. Something's clicked." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "No, he's gone to the next level. You stand by. This Travis Head is going to be something very special." And so Payne picked that. Good on him.
Yeah, it is materialising before us. You saw him in the World Test Championship. I was just pondering this morning. It could stand as a unique achievement for generations. A century in the World Test Championship and the World Cup final in the same year it will only come along rarely. You have to have the same white ball and red ball place in a side. Your nation has to be part of it. And it's a little bit unclear what the future of the World Cup is anyways. He might hold a unique double for generations.
Well, I think he'll, yeah. I mean, you know how much we cherish those innings by Gilchrist and Ponting in the World Cups. But as you say, doubling down like this and doing it in that manner, and it's the circumstances within which it was done, wasn't it, Gerard? You know, in that stadium. I sat up all day. I was watching the game with my son, and it was the strangest of feelings. I kept sort of having to remind myself that Australia were going towards victory because it just felt like a funeral. And I've never witnessed anything more anticlimactic in my life than that stadium and that win. And that's to take nothing away from it because, as you say, one of the great World Cup performances by a team and by a person, and just dead silence. Pradeep Magazine, who's a fantastic Indian writer, he's written a piece in The Wire overnight, I think, and he talks about the sullen silence of a mass of people refusing even to breathe. And there has been a very interesting backlash, Gerard, within India and outside of India against sort of what Indian cricket's become. I reckon that I think a lot of the traditional Indian cricket fan loves cricket. We all know that and recognises that, and and I had talked during the series. If you looked at the crowds at Calcutta, Chennai, Bombay, Bangalore, they're the traditional cricketing centres. There's a very definite feel to the crowds, and I've got a lot of Indian friends who are texting me during, keeping contact during the tournament, saying just this. And I had a family texted me and said, we're firmly in the anyone but India camp now. This Ahmedabad spectacle turns us off Indian cricket. It's this politicization of the game. It's brash. It doesn't sit well with them. And I reckon it probably doesn't even sit well with the team, Gerard. I don't think Rohit Sharma's that kind of captain. I think Virat Kohli had that kind of brash, bold sense to him when he was on the field. But Yeah, I think there's an uncomfortableness among a lot of Indians with the way that that was conducted, that final, and the way that that crowd behaved too. I think they feel embarrassed. In fact, there's an editorial in the Telegraph in India this morning referring to the crowd as crass and condemning them for the silence with which Travis Head's century was greeted, which is what we started talking about. So, yeah, anyone but India. I think a lot of people once would have said anyone but England or anyone but Australia, but welcome to that category of cricket.
So over-egged the pudding on that demonstration of Indian might in life, in politics and in cricket that underpinned a lot of this tournament.
Just a bit of overreach, wasn't there, Gerard? Those concerns around, pitches being swapped and the ICC being told in retrospect and a few little things like that. I mean, but look, we should not be too negative about Indian cricket. I mean, God knows, without them, there wouldn't be cricket on this planet. And they are a generous cricket team in that they tour regularly. A lot of countries, they tour more regularly than Australia does, and they keep a lot of other countries alive. Not only through touring them, but by paying players in the IPL. But there's a sense of overreach in this, and I think a lot of people are happy to see India get a bit of a blood nose in that final. Yeah.
I think my favourite reaction has been Mohammad Kaif, who's former international player for India on Star Sports. I can never accept that the best team has won the World Cup. The Indian team is the best team on paper. So Mohammad Kaif is with Joe Root, trying to put together the moral World Cup final where India and England will play in an alternate universe for the actual right to a trophy that Australia won. Sometimes you can't script. It's almost satire, given what has gone before. Almost satire.
God, yes, it's hard not to be the sort of obnoxious Australian fan on this, but it was just such a wonderful performance, and in a way, it was such a clinical performance too, wasn't it, Gerard? They choked the game. The Australians. We talk about the people in the stadium refusing to breathe. The Australians didn't let the Indian batting breathe. They got them in a corner and they just kept them there. They were relentless. They were ruthless. And to back that decision to bowl first was fantastic. And I think I read today that McDonald and was it Cummins went to the team analyst and said, convince us why we shouldn't, which is exactly what you have to do. Because I noticed Mark Waugh fell one side of it and Kerry O'Keefe the other of the decision. And Kerry O'Keefe said, well, of course you would bat second because it's easier to bat second. But you could see that, but this is the world final, says Mark Waugh. You've got to put the runs on the board. And most of us are going, yeah, put some runs on the board. What are you doing? But they held their nerve. They didn't change. They stuck to what they knew was the right thing to do.
And risked what would have been ridicule and ferocious criticism in the aftermath had it backfired. That's part of what I admire most. And the stories that will progressively come out, I'm so looking forward to hearing, is so that the presentation of not convince us, and then we have to convince the rest of the team that this is the right thing to do, but it is based, here's all the analytics behind it in the age where analytics has taken over. I think it's going to be, because even though it makes sense, it was such a bold thing to do, to defy expectation and convention, I think. And so what was in that presentation? I look forward to learning more about that.
If you didn't do it, you're kind of saying to your batters, we don't trust you to chase too. So it's a vote of faith in the batters, isn't it? And I love the way, if you were that bowling side, you could have done a mic drop at the end of that Indian innings and said, we've done our work, fellas, over to you. Yeah, do what you do best. Which they did. So that complete team performance, I just love. I love all of that. And if you go through the World Cup, some people had modest World Cups, but at some point, everybody contributed to this. Everybody in the 11, some of the players outside the 11. McDonald's coaching, George Bailey's selection. You
Mm.
know, we got to salute George Bailey. I mean, he's a guy who kind of won a World Cup in 2015, and I don't think it ever sat right with him that he's pictured as part of the World Cup winning team. Hey, yeah, he did captain the first match of that World Cup, but he never played another one. To come in here and hold his nerve. He held his nerve from the get-go, didn't he, with the Travis Head decision? You know, I mean, a lot of criticism about that. And then, you know, the spinner selection, they backed Zampa, they backed Maxwell to back Zampa up. And of course, they had Travis Head, the joker in the pack as well. But there was some bold moves by George and the selection panel at the start of this, and they paid off at the end. And the biggest one, of course, being Marnus. Yeah, Marnus cannot play one-day cricket. His strike rate is crap. Well, have a look at his strike rate in the final. I think it was about 52. It was worse than crap. I shouldn't say that on radio. Sorry, Gerard. But so yeah, there was another gamble that paid off.
And to go with the Pat Cummins quote, nothing more satisfying than hearing a big crowd go silent. We're starting to hear that a bit of Simon and Garfunkel, just listen to the sound of silence, was used, which I think is just deluxe.
That's hilarious. I'm unlucky enough to have been at the age where you had hippie teachers, Gerard, young women in long skirts who thought that they could play acoustic guitar. And I remember all through grade 4, once a week, we used to have to sing the sounds of silence. The lyrics were up on the blackboard of St. Teresa's, Kennington. I learnt to hate that song. I do love Simon and Garfunkel. But yeah, I like to think of the team listening to that song beforehand. And by God, was it a self-fulfilling prophecy, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's perfect. Their mantra and the way that they went about enforcing it, make it so, and they made an idea into reality. So part of this week, I think, is around trying to place what has happened here, the magnitude of the achievement, the circumstances that was done in, within Australia's history of World Cups, within Australia's cricketing history, within Australia's broader sporting history. This feels like an all-time achievement, and I suspect it will grow in affection, and it will find its place in the lofty reaches.
Yeah, I think we are now having to reassess this team and what it's achieved, as you know. So I guess we are doing right at this very moment. And that to me is significant because I think that this team in a lot of ways has lived in the shadows of great teams past. And even as this tournament kicked off, we heard Matthew Hayden reworking that complaint that there are no greats of Australian cricket around this team, and that's an issue. Go, well, how do Andrew McDonald and George Bailey and Michael Di Venuto and whoever else is around this team feel? Okay, yes, they are not greats of Australian cricket, and they've been cast in that role as a sort of this is a very working class Australian outfit, and this is a team that hasn't quite achieved what it could have. Well, now it's achieved as much, if not more, than some of our great sides. So, we really have to sort of recategorize this team, this outfit, and this period, because this is a team basically born in the break from Justin Langer, and with it, the break from him and his mates, and that ugly few, month or two that we had there in cricket, which kind of lingers on a little bit, I think, in the back rooms of this team. And let's not, take note of Adam Zampa on social media posting Michael Clark's brutal assessment of their chances at the start of the tournament. They put these ones away, these guys. They see the greats of the past not rating them, and that hurts them.
I noticed you've been going back through some of the sheer nonsense that was written around the cricket team and the woke pushback against the captain and the team itself, which has been the stupidity of what was getting written at the time. And it was, they didn't have the accomplishments to push back against that, and now they do. And just to show how puerile and mean some of what was being written was, never mind woefully inaccurate depiction of this team and its characters.
Baseless. It's all been baseless, Gerard. You'd reckon that bloody Pat Cummins was Greta Thunberg's boyfriend, that he was out there every day, with a placard telling people what to do. barely opens his mouth on any subject. Pat Cummins, I think I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, didn't I, about that altercation I had down on the building site with someone who labelled him arrogant. He's the furthest from arrogant.
Yep.
And this team is the furthest from arrogant too in the way it goes about things. It's a really nice nature to the way this team played its cricket. And equally India too. I thought that they played the game with great spirit as well. Obviously they were broken by the expectation placed upon them. But yeah, we'll readjust our thinking a little bit on those topics, hopefully, because it's been unfair.
Peter Lalor, if you wanted an illustration of cricket's crassness in terms of content, this is it. A T20 tournament straight off the back of the World Cup, India and Australia. My goodness, could we be any more cynical?
You've got to respect David Warner's ability to sort of wriggle out of these things, don't you? I know he was really unhappy about being in that series, and he'd been complaining and carrying on. So it looks like he got his way at the last minute. They brought Aaron Hardy in, and not only did he get let off, he actually got home yesterday. He beat everybody home, David Warner, in his inevitable fashion. Perhaps his IPL team provides him with a private jet or something, Gerard. But actually, I think I wonder if he actually paid his own way home to get home quicker. This is just terrible, this tournament, just terrible. And what are you doing, Steve Smith? I mean, seriously, a couple of people have said to me he looked really tired. He looked tired at the end of that tournament. I'm not close enough there to see him, and you'd assume that he sleeps better during a one-day tournament than a test series because, there's only so many playing days. But yeah, I would have thought he's better off coming home. I mean, Green and Marsh have come home, and Green's hardly played at all, and I think he's skipping the only available Sheffield Shield match, so they think he warrants a rest. Stephen warrants a rest too. He looks like he needs to freshen up before the summer.
I read the concept that he's going to open the batting to see what that looks like. It doesn't strike me as an opener for Australia at next year's World Cup.
Who knows? He's Steve Smith. I remember we didn't strike me as a T20 player much. Well, in recent years until he made that comeback to the BBL and made those two very impressive centuries, admittedly only in the BBL. Yeah. I don't know what's going on with Steve. Is it this fear of missing out that's kind of costing him in a way? But hey, Marnus matches him and raises him one on that front, doesn't he? Because Marnus is there too. Marnus is never going to miss a chance to sort of put his hand up to play in a World Cup. And that's another one of the great stories, isn't it? The miracle of Marnus. I mean, I'm thinking of coming back to Christianity after I've seen the way Marnus is going. God looks after that bloke. It's quite extraordinary. I think he's been dropped 5 times for one of those teams. And there probably were about 5 occasions in this World Cup where you thought he couldn't play. But he always did. And I think, I don't know if I said it to you, Joe, but I said, even if he's not named in the 11 for that final, someone will twist their ankle getting off the bus. There's nothing more certain. I did say it to you. There's nothing more certain in life than him playing that final.
Yep. It's the incidents and accidents that all roll together. And that's why I do think the affection for this will grow as the stories are fully told. The golf cart story still got a few chapters in it, I reckon. And
Marsh has upset India by putting his stockinged feet on the cup. That should have been theirs.
All good fun. Do you think so the best cricket has now been played? An outstanding year of cricket where it was all loaded in a test series in India, the World Test Championship, an Ashes series in England, and a World Cup. Do you think there's a possibility now to frame this summer, which is less attractive, as a celebration of the team?
I think that's what you have to do, isn't it? And I think we see some of that framing already. I think in Channel 7's promotions, it's around this team and it becomes even more important now. In fact, I was trying to fashion some article for the SCG newsletter this year, trying to get people excited about turning up to a test against, who is it again, Gerard? I kept forgetting the West Indies.
No, Pakistan's at the SCG.
Again. Yeah. We're celebrating the team and perhaps a bit of passing out of the era too, won't we? how many more of them will be there the following summer? They certainly won't be an intact team. This is the last time we will see that team on the field this summer. And it is a test team too, isn't it? That was one of the pleasing elements about the World Cup final, that both teams essentially fielded what were sort of 80% test players. It was nice to see that, a reassertion of that sort of quality play and quality player. Yeah, it has to be framed like that, Gerard, because otherwise it's a little underwhelming. I see, Pakistan, Harris Ralph's pulled out of the tour now. Unfortunately, they won't have Naseem Shah, the 20-year-old quick. They've replaced their skipper, Babar Azam, with Shan Masood. So they're not exactly arriving in great condition.
That they have been one of the illustrations of the World Cup is an end point. Is for Sri Lanka, it's been engulfed in political turmoil. For Pakistan, it's the end of Babar Azam's time as captain in all three formats. So yeah, you never really know what to expect with Pakistan, but that's a level of turmoil that I guess they know relatively well. But at the end of an unsuccessful tournament, it's a big price.
Yeah, well, you're going to pay a big price if you're a Pakistan team and you go that poorly in India. Geopolitics come into it as well, don't they?
Yes, they do. All right, Pete. Another round of Sheffield Shield coming, and out of that, so that'll be the final round in the setup, won't it? They'll have played 6, and
Yes.
That's a big body of work for those who needed to force their case. And then all of our assessments will turn towards what are the decisions for Australia to make this test summer.
Yeah, and look, there aren't too many immediate decisions to be made, are there, Gerard? Not that I've turned my mind to this, but I mean, I suppose we've just mentioned Mitch Marsh and Green going over to Western Australia, but my assumption is that Marsh is ahead of Green and would be in the first test team if he's the first choice if fit. And are there any other selection issues facing us until David Warner stands down after the SCG test? I don't think so.
So you're in that's a formality for you that Warner will play those 3 tests?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think judging on his form, not just against the white ball, but the way he batted in that Ashes, he's in a reasonable place. He's not 100% David Warner, but he's very good David Warner, and that's better than any other option that you have. And perhaps also now looking back through it, and hey, they're not going to get an open top tour through the town, so maybe that World Cup winning team gets, as we say, gets a bit of an open top tour through the summer, the test summer.
Yeah, I hope that's what happens.